Join me in welcoming Dylan and Doreen.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. I'm going to take this off so it doesn't bump into my mic. Oh, no, I'm not. It's attached to the mic. So we're living with this now. Hi, everyone. As Christine said, my name is Dylan Lockwood. I'm the online content editor for Zpryme. And I am very pleased to have Doreen here. Thank you for joining me. We're here to talk about designing people for the digital world. So why don't you just give a little bit about your background and your work in design?
So I've been in this space for over 20 years. I ran a company called Frog Design, which was design and innovation. Then I went to Quirky. And then 2 years ago, I went to the University of Texas just by happenstance to start a program in design thinking. They wanted to integrate design thinking as a core fundamental in undergraduate education. So I started something called the Center for Integrated Design. That was so successful that they actually started a brand new school within the College of Fine Art called the School of Design and Creative Technology, which I am now the assistant dean. And it's essentially teaching students not only about design thinking, design methodologies, but also arts and entertainment technologies, the intersection of health and design, and of course, keeping all of our undergraduates, giving them those core fundamentals and what is it going to take to really have human-centered design as part of just their core curriculum as they get out into the business world. One more thing I'm going to say is before I took this position, I talked to many companies because that was my background. I was in the business world. And so I went back to a lot of my clients, some of them which were energy clients, by the way, and talked to them about what they wanted to see in students coming into the marketplace that they were hired. And so, of course, they want students to be good at their craft, an engineer, a designer, a computer scientist. But they wanted students to have empathy. This was the most interesting. They wanted them to be able to problem solve, and they wanted them to be able to work in multidisciplinary teams, which is very much what human-centered design is all about.
Yeah, so how do we rethink or design the human experience in a digital world, in an increasingly digital world?
We're doing it. We're living it. So what's happening is businesses are running and chasing it because humans, by their nature, are doing it. We can say everything we want about social media and the social world, but it's turned our heads upside down in terms of how we interact. For example, end users or customers, they used to write letters to companies all the time about things they wanted to see. But companies didn't necessarily have to pay attention to it. Today, you have to pay attention to that stuff. Today, your consumer is leading you where you want to go. And so what you're seeing are businesses chasing it. Or if you're wise enough and you pay attention to the behaviors of people, you will see where things are going. And that's the insight. And that's the human-centered part. You can see trends in people's behaviors, and that's what tells you where things are going.
So, but where are the dangers in that design space? The landmines that we should be avoiding.
I think the landmines are not doing it. The landmines are, and we have graveyards filled with businesses that died on the vine out there because they didn't pay attention to people's behaviors. I don't know, Blockbuster, Kodak, Sony Music. I mean, we could go on and on. Those are different industries, similar problems. They didn't want to pay attention to where things were going. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, would you think you're sitting in this room today and Elon Musk is leading in energy, or whatever you want to say. That is a household name in energy. You guys could all sit here and say whatever you want, but that's a household name in energy. Who would have thought that, right? Who would have thought that would have happened? But again, paying attention to behaviors and where people are going leads you to be able to make decisions.
So we're often talking about, we need to innovate. We need to innovate. We need to have this design thinking. But that's an easy thing to say. But what take? And you say that the landmine is not doing it. So what does it take to make innovation happen? How do you go about doing it?
innovation, if you is scary, right? So every time someone says, I'm in disruption. I met somebody yesterday, and his title was Director of Disruption and Innovation. I'm like, boy, you don't have a lot of friends. I mean, I don't know about me, but I like to get up in the morning, drink my coffee. That kind of stuff is scary. So what I always talk about when you talk about design thinking, and let me just explain something. Let me just take one step back. Design thinking is something that people in the design world have been doing for 50 years. It's a methodology, because you can't design something until you understand how a human is going to use it, right? So you can't design anything. And so all you're doing is you're paying attention to people's behaviors. You're getting insights from that. And you're using those insights to then create some ideas around products and services, experiences, and you're testing those. Now, where it gets difficult is the more you know about something and the more experienced you are about something, the less you want to hear the truth. It's just a fact. It really is, and it's not. And so it's really that the hardest part is for people to actually let the process happen and really believe and understand what people are saying. I have seen people in so many workshops that I've attended who have said things like, well, that's not true. And you have videos and upon videos of customers saying something, and people, well, no, I know that. That's not true. Because they think they know. So in a way, suspending a little bit of your knowledge and letting the process take over, you can learn a lot. And then doing small tests. I never believed in big disruptions because I don't think that helps a company, especially established companies. But I do believe that small disruptions, small changes, then lead exponentially to much bigger changes. Because we all rally around success. We all want to be successful. And so when you see success, you're like, I want more of that. Feed me that in the morning.
Can you give any examples of those kind of small disruptions that have led to greater change over time?
I'll just take a totally outside of the energy, totally different. How many of you have been to Disney World? Recently? Like in the last couple of years? Yeah? How many of you got a Magic Band? All right. So I spent 4 years of my life working on Magic Bands. But before we got to Magic Bands, all we were doing with that was understanding how to create a better experience for people wanting to use the fast pass concept. And what happened is once you created something that was fun, like a fast pass, you began to see how people would react. And what you then began to learn was people wanted to do more using their phone. People wanted to do more from home before they got to the park. They wanted to plan their experience. And so when I say 4 years, because we kept adding things on to make this a better and better experience for people who went to the park. And so it started out as a very small project that ended up being a $1 billion project, for the Walt Disney Company, because they had to do so much infrastructure changes. And for them, ended up being a very, very, very successful venture into the digital space. Now, if we had gone to them and say, oh, excuse me, we need $1 billion to do this, do you think? They wouldn't have let that happen at all, but over time began to see the successes and led to something great. So I just wanted to give you something that has nothing to do with your industry, because this happens in every single industry all the time.
So we were talking a little bit about how you need to sort of figure out people's behaviors so that you can have that sort of human-centered design. That's a very methodical approach, but there's also an empathy piece to it, isn't there?
Well, that is empathy. If you can go and if you're interviewing people and you're watching and observing people, you're seeing what drives them. You're seeing what motivates them. And by the way, empathy, and all of you sitting there going, soft skill, I don't do that. Yeah. Bad. Seriously. It is the number one skill you need to lead in your organization. You need to be successful. And if you're going to make any sort of product or service or experience, you better get on the empathy bandwagon. And all you're doing with empathy is understanding people. You're taking your emotions, your feelings out of it, and you're understanding what motivates and drives people. And it's a learned, by the way, it's a learned skill. Some of it comes to some people better than others, but it is an absolute learned skill. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And the better you get at it, the more successful you are at creating something that is good, that people want, because you're taking your emotions, your feelings out of it.
But how can we create that empathy in the context of programming and technology to bring it back to the tech piece? I guess the idea is when you're if you're a utility that's dealing with millions of people in your area, how do you have that kind of design when you're not able to go in and monitor every single person's activity?
No, you're never able to monitor anybody. I mean, you have products out there in the world that are for, billions of people, but you can manage you could go out and interview a subset of people in different demographics, in different economic situations, and get back that information, which will tell you then a lot of information. I'll do a lot of ethnography, which is really going out and studying and looking at people. You don't need 500 people. By the time you have 30 people, you've heard it all. They literally are saying the same thing. Just did a project for a pharmaceutical company, and they wanted to know, their premise was one of the executives decided that they needed a nighttime vitamin. Like they were going to get the market for nighttime vitamins. Okay. So we said, well, we should find out why people take vitamins. Well, no, they know why people take vitamins. Well, let's go out. So we went out and we asked people why they take vitamins, what type of vitamins they take, and when they took vitamins. Out of the 50 people, 42 said they had no idea why they took them. They kind of knew that their parents took it and that they were told to take vitamins, but they really didn't know. And most of them just took a multivitamin. And they kind of had them either, they took them usually in the morning because that was the thing. And they really didn't know the benefit. Now, there were 8 people that were, clued in, right? They had their magnesium and their, whatever. But the majority of people had no idea, which was shocking to this company, because obviously then creating a nighttime vitamin without solving the first problem would be an ultimate flop for them. They had to go out and educate first so people would understand why they would need a daytime, because they didn't want them to stop, by the way, they didn't want them to stop taking the morning vitamin, they just wanted them to add the evening vitamin in. So they didn't do a one-for-one swap, but so this was a big aha, and I will tell you, we played lots of video in there, and there was a lot of harumphing at first in the like that. I don't want. That's not true. But video and people, they're not lying. I mean, there's a ton of selling. You're seeing it word for word there. These are real people, and that makes a huge difference.
So that's a good example of how you can kind of learn from some of your missteps. What role do you think failure does play in innovation?
I don't think there's any. I mean, I never use the F word because I think it has a horrible connotation. We learn, I'm in education now, right? It's really fascinating. These are now college students coming to me. All they ask me is, how are they going to get an A? Because they've learned from K through 12, it's about A's. How many of you have teenage children? When your teenager comes home and says, I got a D, Dad, I failed. You go, fail first, that's great. No. So it's a terrible term that we use. Sorry, I know there's tons of books written about that. It's learning. We need to be in a continuous learning, and we need to understand the value that mistakes bring. They bring a value to you. Most people, I've seen so few mistakes that have taken down, I've seen no mistakes that have taken down a company, and I've had some big ones. So we have to learn from the value of learning from that. In the scientific process. In science, every mistake you made gets you closer to the conclusion, and we reward that. We applaud that. In business, we talk about failure, and usually it's who are you going to fire? That's the wrong way of looking at it. So really, the F word never enters my mind.
We're close to time here, but one thing I want to know: what's one thing you hope everyone takes away that maybe they didn't know coming in about this design?
There are now, finally, we have quantitative, everybody loves quantitative, we have quantitative studies, design-led, from different organizations. Design-led organizations are more successful than other organizations, any other. This is quantifiable studies done. And so you really have to look at the role that design will be able to play in your organization. And that's getting to the root of what motivates and drives humans to want to use a product or service that you want. And so the only question I would ask is, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you want to be the best that you could be and have people use your product and service and lead as opposed to follow? You all have that opportunity to do that. And I'm not sure why that scares people so much. It still does. And I don't know. We're really not scary people, actually. We're pretty easy to get along with. And actually, you have a lot of fun with us, too.
Well, that's really food for thought. Thank you very much, Doreen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Don't you want to get rid of